He won because people were afraid of Trump. People weren't voting for him because they were excited about what he had to say. It's because they were terrified of another Trump presidency. And the problem with what you're talking about right now is a self-perpetuating issue. You know, liberals are terrified of the realization that they share this country with monsters who would have them killed. Well, that's tough, but we have to grow up. We have to learn that. And fear motivates. And it's legitimate fear. This isn't like Tucker Carlson fear-mongering where he makes shit up so that his billionaire masters can get away with another tax cut. This is like climate change type fear. Real stuff, really happening. People should be afraid. They should act in that fear. We've been trying to get people afraid of climate change for years and years and years. And you know what? We've done a terrible job of it. In large part because a bunch of people in this country think that it's God's given rapture and they think opposing it is, you know, sacrilegious. But also because liberals just aren't cut out for the fear game. They're weak and spineless and made of jelly. But it can be improved. It's possible to improve. You know, the French resistance in World War II wasn't just leftists, it was liberals. It was centrists, moderates even. They were united in a hatred of fascism. And they fought and they died to, well, irritate the Nazi occupants. We need that energy. If we're going to concede this, like, well, people aren't engaging with this, you know, they're going to kill us rhetoric, then we're already dead. We need to...
Because that's not something that...
Then make it. Then make it appealing to them. Make them see.
But there has to be some factual basis to it. And
there is. And that's your
not factual
problem.
basis
Yes.
to a mass killing of Americans.
Do you know how genocides happen?
By the Republican Party.
There is. Do you know how genocides take place? We're already at dehumanizing language of degenerates who are being convinced and groomed into their degeneracy by an elite cabal of economic... It's the Nazis.
How many times have we seen that language that didn't lead to a genocide?
I'm sorry.
You know how long people have been getting called degenerate?
Do you know how many precursors there are to the current wave of anti-LGBT media attention and legislation? Because we have the 1980s, which was when Reagan let hundreds of thousands of gay people die by preventing the CDC from doing any research into AIDS. So that was a genocide. The last time this happened was a genocide. Even in that moment, we would have been further from progress if the backlash to that was... I'm still unclear on... Okay, actually, this is a great question. That happens. What is the Vaush response to that? Because you kind of got like, oh, no, that's not what I said. Whenever I didn't mean to make your voice sound annoying there. Whenever I said, okay, so go kill politicians. And it's like, no, of course not. It's defense. Well, then what, in that example, if that's a genocide, what is the response that is more revolutionary? What are you trying to do? Get my channel banned? When people are being killed in a dog whistly way. That's not a dog whistle. When people are being killed by the hundreds of thousands, do you seriously think it's unethical to use violence to defend yourself? Do you really think that's unethical? Would it have been unethical for the Jews to fight back? I actually don't think it's unethical. I think it's, okay, you bring up that example. Of course, in that situation, we can see how violence not only is the only option, but then also could lead us to where we want to go. I'm asking you, in the example of AIDS in the 80s, is that going to take us forward in the most effective way? If you commit hard enough, ethical, even if it's ethical. If you commit, of course it's ethical, and if you commit hard enough, anything is possible. I'll ask you, do you think, would you have been chiding the Jews for fighting back in, say, 31, even if you knew through some prophetic ability that their attempts at fighting back would have been ineffective? Because it seems like you're only telling me that self-defense is justifiable if you can know the future and know that it will work for sure. It's possible that there's nothing we can do. This might be a pointless conversation. It's possible that the dominoes have already begun to fall. We're not going to stop Republicans from winning, and no amount of violent counteraction is going to prevent them from overriding our democracy. It might be too late. So at this point, I've seen decades of liberal messaging and centrist, oh, bring them over, shit fail. I just think we're past that point. I think we're at the point now where we have to recognize... There's never been an actual progressive movement, like a Bernie-style progressive movement, that rose up thus far. It's too late. In 2024, that's the next election. We don't have time
for progressives to win, to take over the Democratic Party and win the House and the
agree.
Senate
It's
and the
crazy,
presidency.
alarmist. Of course, we should be raising all of the red flags, but there's no way in which people being ready for violence, the only thing that's going to do I mean, I'm okay with people getting a gun in case something ever happens, of course.
Oh, there you go.
Second Amendment. But there's not an outcome that I can see that has been explained in a logical way where we express our ambition to conduct violence if needed, and that helps us win the election or something, or helps us after the election, you know.
Why is this
take out
being
any
framed in
situation.
electoral terms for you? This is about life and death.
You just asked 2024.
2024 is done. We've already,
Nah.
2024 is a coin flip. Maybe something happens between now and then, but whatever outcomes are going to take place from direct action aren't going to have a significant impact in 2024. I'm talking about what happens no matter who wins that election. Maybe a Dem wins 2024. Maybe we have to wait till 2028 for this to be relevant. I don't know. But eventually, they're going to get a hold on us. They've been redistricting like hell. Every single time they undo something, Democrats don't have the power to redo. You know, we need to be ready. And I have to ask you, just out of curiosity, when in Germany would you have said violence was okay?
I'm definitely not familiar enough with the timeline, so I can't give specifics. But obviously, I do think violence was justified at certain points. Like at a certain point, it definitely would have been. But for example, if I were to make a comparison, because we didn't know the future, when just racist things were being said about Jewish Germans, if Jews started going out and just, again, I'm not clear on even what
What about arming up?
is.
Wait, hold on. I'm just saying getting ready. So I'm only saying getting ready.
Not at all what you, okay.
No, that's what I'm saying, getting ready.
Oh, perfect. I'm totally okay for everybody to get a firearm as long as they are very safe with it.
Well, sure, they shouldn't be unsafe, but that's not an
in
exaggeration. Getting ready to defend yourself. That's what I've been saying. So they can do that. What about when the German government started passing laws of restriction on Jewish people and businesses? Like specifically designating Jewish people as a separate legal category alongside dehumanizing rhetoric in order to categorize them separately and limit their movement, you know, oppress them in a variety of ways. That plus dehumanizing language plus hate crimes start to rise against them. You know, in that environment, because that's where we are right now with trans people. That exact point is where we are. In that environment, do you think it's unfair to go like, yeah, you should be like ready if they come for you, like they are getting ready for something and you need to be ready, you need to arm yourself?
Again, I already said I think it's fair to just say everyone, you know, be ready for anything. But in the case of trans people,
for anything, seeing
a very but that's not the focus of your commentary. Your commentary isn't like be ready in case anything happens, but be super safe. It was like, let's go. They want us all dead. That was one of your quotes.
Do you think it would be inappropriate for the Jews to have said that back in the early 30s? They want us dead, the Nazis want us all dead. They were right.
I don't know the specifics of the build-up to World War II enough to compare it to our current situation.
Well, the Night of Broken Glass happened in 38, like a year before the war, you know, but the mechanisms for the Holocaust were laid well before that point, you know, 33, 34, you know, you have a political party in power. You really telling me back in like 34 or whatever, when all the precursors I've described to you were in place, they were saying something like, yeah, the Nazis are evil, they want you dead, and you would go in and say, hey, come on, you really think you're going to convince Nazis with rhetoric like that? Like, you know?
And that's a great thing, that it's nothing like, or not nothing, it's not equal to what we're seeing now, because like in the case of trans people, increasingly people are totally on board. And I can tell you, every single person that I've talked to who has like an icky belief on how we should be treating trans people in society, it's from being misinformed on what is going on. Most of it is like, oh, I'm really scared because I think that little kids are going into class and teachers are saying, you're not a boy, you're a girl, you're not a boy, you're a girl, until they turn into a girl. Like,
that's what they thought about the Jews.
Oh, no one's advocating for that. And right now we have the people on our side, and then there's this fringe that's
same in Germany. Germany was a very progressive place before during the Weimar Republic. Not as progressive as modern day America.
You're saying that Hitler and the Nazis was not a popular movement?
No, the Germany Nazis only had initially support of like 25 to 30% of the population. They seized power anti-democratically, and through seizing control of education and the means of propaganda, they convinced a larger and larger group of Germans of the general political aims, misinforming them. Some of the stuff they'd like to say about Jews were that they were effete intellectuals who would corrupt their children through degenerate messaging designed to destroy Western civilization. It was not a popular movement to begin with. They seized power anti-democratically. You know how many people are Republicans in the US? About 30%. Everything is set up. And the Germans and the Nazis were not any more intrinsically anti-Jewish to begin with than modern Republicans are against trans people. Maybe you can convince 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, but every night Tucker Carlson speaks to an audience of millions. I'm sorry, at a certain point, look, maybe everything works out, but past a certain point, not saying you need to be ready is just irresponsible.
Okay, and I already agreed. You can totally say you need to be ready. What I am kind of addressing is very different than just you need to be ready. But I do think, even in the case that you're talking about, if early on when they started slandering Jewish people, if there's a bunch of Jewish people who started enacting violence or kind of promoting really violent rhetoric, even though I think it would be justified and moral, I don't think even you would believe that would have helped them. That would have caused it all to seem more justified. And that's why I'm really scared about going around saying Republicans are demons and human flesh.
The Holocaust happened
anyone
anyway.
who's like a little soft-hearted liberal is going to be like, oh, that seems so crazy. Like, I definitely don't want to be a part of that movement.
When the Holocaust happened anyway, you can't really go back in time and be like, well, if you'd been more violent, a second Holocaust would have, like the Holocaust 2 would have happened. No, actually, I think that something would have changed if Jews back then had simply armed themselves and then killed all of the Nazi party, you know? And there were attempts to do that, but I mean full on, kick down the door, gun them all down, you know, maybe they get arrested or executed.
Boom, you just said it.
Whoa, but killing Nazis?
Right now,
wait, are we against killing Nazis here?
I'm totally on board. I'm saying right there you're making a comparison. So then
I've made nothing.
This is what you wanted.
I have made no allegories in this conversation, okay?
What's an allegory?
No comparisons, analogies, none whatsoever. But yes,
what?
That's
what we're talking about. We're comparing. Yes, you.
No, we're not. No, this is unrelated. The Jews might have been successful in preventing their own extermination. Wait, do you agree? Do you agree that while they're facing legal persecution, an anti-democratic party is seizing additional power, the Jews, say 33, 34, if they had hatched some plot to gun down Hitler, Goebbels, you know, some Nazi upper party meeting, say it's like Inglourious Bastards, they get invited to a theater and all just get gunned down in the final act, something like that. Would that have been wrong? Might have stopped the Holocaust.
Morally,
and World
probably
War II.
not. But if, again, we're talking about how this can be compared to our current situation.
Morally,
stop. I'm talking.
Do you think it would have been?
No,
but would it have been practical? Because it would have killed.
It doesn't sound. Okay, if you think if they could have effectively wiped out all the Nazi leadership, then maybe practically, that would have done something. But I don't think right now, because the comparison you don't want to make now that you said that is that's what some progressive group should do to Republican leadership.
And would I even imply that? So let's say that
then what are we talking about Germany
let's say in Nazi Germany. So the assassination of political leadership is a very effective way at destabilizing a political movement. That's
so
just...
then make it, so then apply it to our current situation.
Well, wait, hold on. I'm just trying to figure out what your threshold is for the Nazis, the ones that we can talk about. Okay, so with the Nazis, we have the precursor to a genocide being constructed. You know, these people are evil. They want Jews dead. Blah blah blah. At what point, you know, because the alt fiction, what if like a resistance group had killed Hitler before the Holocaust? This is something liberals have been jerking off to for almost a century now. When would it have been acceptable if that assassination had led to destabilization, internal tumult, and then eventually like a restoration of democracy? It would have been messy, I'm sure, but better than World War II.
I'm not familiar with the timeline, but if they passed a law that's hurting, you know, Jewish businesses, like you said, Jewish individuals, and all of a sudden, like, but It's the practical thing. If you could actually magically wipe out all of Nazi leadership,
Do you think it's like impossible?
maybe that could be ethical. But
Do you think it's impossible to
very,
like
very difficult for a small minority to wipe out a governing body.
There are examples all the time of a government seizes power, and then shortly afterwards, the leadership of that government is killed by insurgents or radicals or by a conflicting faction, and then there's an internal power struggle and someone else takes power. I don't think anyone worse than the Nazis could take power. That's pretty much like the war. That's about as bad as it gets. So whoever would have taken power afterwards probably wouldn't have done the Holocaust and probably wouldn't have started World War II.
Republicans are demons in human flesh.